We always begin with a prayer. So if Ms. Teresa, you will indulge us.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Bow your heads and pray with me, please. Dear Heavenly Father, we are so thankful for today. We know this is your day, and we're just glad we're in it. God, please remember the children every place. Remember our leaders of this nation. Thank you, God, for having someone who looks like me as the nominee for the Democrats. God, bless this forum this morning. Bless this day for us. It's in your Son Jesus' name we pray. Let us say together. Amen.
Amen. All right. Our guest today is Alysia Osborne from the city of Charlotte. This is a treat. We didn't even have to put down a deposit to get this dynamic speaker. I was afraid, that we couldn't afford it, but, I guess the reputation of the Sarah Stevenson Tuesday Forum has that much meaning in community. Following our presentation, we will take questions from the audience. Please raise your hand and we will add your name to a list of questions. I will call on your name, in which the order your name was added to the list. Questions should be no longer than 30 seconds. Questions should be questions. And the answer you receive is the answer it is. We don't do back and forth. There is no debate. We also have a timekeeper, Ms. Nathalie McElrath. She has a sign that will remind you that time is up. Now, if we have anybody in the room for the first time, we would like you to introduce yourself and or your affiliations. We'll give them, you gotta get off that tablet. Come on now, we're gonna start over here. Good morning, good morning.
I'm Angel Martinez, and I'm an intern through MIAP at CMS, and I go to Myers Park High School.
Hello, good morning. My name is Presley Lima. I'm also an intern at MIAP for CMS. I'm working with Dennis, and I'm a rising junior at Vilgaberry.
Good morning, I'm Jordan Spencer. I'm the new admin secretary for Dennis.
Good morning. I am 6 feet tall, if you were wondering. I'm Renee Goals, the new director of capital planning and real estate for Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools.
I saw you.
I'm Grayson Thomas, the son of Glenn Thomas.
The great Glenn Thomas. Introduced like Game of Thrones, and the son of.
Not the first time, but glad to be back, Glenn Thomas.
Good to have you all. Thomas, well, Mr. Dr. Thomas, excuse me. The children are the future indeed. Come back, join us, spend your summer, not at fun places, but at the Sarah Stevenson Tuesday Morning Forum with adults. You will learn so much, your future will be great. With that said, I would love to pass it to our featured presenter today, Ms. Alysia Osborne.
Good morning, everyone. I can't stop laughing. He's a whole mess. And the invitation really did go like he said. Well, what happened was we were texting back and forth about some other stuff. He was like, "Why have you? Can you come on Tuesday?" I said, "Absolutely." I rarely say no to this guy. So whether we're at the Belmont Center, the Breakfast Forum, or in the West Side doing some kind of food festival, if he asked me to come, I'm coming. So it's a pleasure to be here. Haven't been here in person in a while, I think since before the pandemic, but I'm glad we're all back in person. And so Winston asked me to come and talk a little bit about the Charlotte Future 2040 comprehensive plan. Like, say that 5 times fast. It's a lot, it's a mouthful, the title itself, but the body of work is so important for Charlotte. And why, when I was putting these slides together, and they're just visual aids, I really just talk about key points and things that I think are really important for people to get involved around. This is a very unique time in our city. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of development, a lot of change, a lot of funding that's floating around for all these different things. This thing is very sensitive. Hold on a second. Go back. There's a lot of change that's happening in our community, and people are asking themselves, where do I fit in? Or how can I influence that change? Or why should I care if it's not helping me with the things that are right in front of me? And so I say to you all and to anyone that I encounter when we're having these conversations about growth and development, the conversations about our future, what things will look like, is happening now. It's happening 20, 30 years before things you actually see them coming out of the ground. And I know sometimes that's hard to imagine, but if you can just dedicate a little bit of your time to commit to the process of being at the table, to listen and to provide your voice and share your voice in the process, it really does matter. So I know we're talking about voting. I debated whether to just come on my Kamala Harris beat this morning. I said, you know what, tone it down. So a little later, but I really want to make sure that people understand change happens locally first, and then it goes up the ladder. But we can start today by learning about the process and really trying to get involved. And so this slide just talks about how big and how fast we're growing. If you've been here, I've been in Charlotte 20 years. If you've been here longer than that, I'm sure that what's happening today is blowing your mind. And so you're wondering, how do I get involved and where do I fit in? And so I mentioned that this is a unique time in our community. The city has undertaken in the past 5 years 3 big bodies of work that says this is how we're going to grow, this is how we're going to connect that growth, and then what are the rules that we put in place to make sure that it connects back to what we expected, and then doing it in a way that's been transparent like never before, where people can actually provide feedback, they can see what these changes may look like, can share and talk about what they like, dislike, and question it. And so when you see these projects, any of these logos or any of these names pop up in your email box, a door hanger, or in your mail, please do not hesitate to show up or send somebody. Send one person, 10 people, and it doesn't matter their age or however you think they might be connected. Just make sure they show up. And so today, I work for the planning department. I will focus on that part of the work that talks about how we use the land. So I'll focus more so on the left side of the screen. And so this is a summary of the vision work that my team and our team leads. The other side that connects to that is the development, the legal work. And that's what you hear when people talk about the zoning ordinance, the U-Divide development ordinance, and that type of thing. Those are the rules. What I focus on and what my team and we focus on with the community is, what is our vision? Simply asking the question, what do we want to be when we grow up? And who's at the table or not at the table to talk about that vision, and how can we make sure people are involved and engaged in that process? And so back in 2021, the city adopted the comprehensive plan in June, and soon thereafter we started implementing that plan by putting things on maps. So decisions, when they're made through a lens of equity, and that the money follows where the policy is stated. Notice when you see people talking about policy and the money, the purse follows the policy. First, purse follows the policy. And so what we say our vision is and what our needs are is outlined in that strategic, that comprehensive plan. And we're currently working on the community area plans, which really is focusing on our neighborhood level engagement in 14 geographies. And I'll talk about that in more detail. If I can get the slide thing. Is it stuck, Steve?
20. Yes.
Oh.
Still nothing. You want to go to the next one?
Yeah, next slide. Let's do it like that. Old school. Manual. That's fine. And so the community area process, as I mentioned, is a neighborhood level discussion with neighborhoods across 14 geographies that really outlines how we use the land, how we connect it with streets and sidewalks, and then talks about open space and also parks and recreation, those different types of things that we need in our community. Why this is important is that last year we had 42 workshops across the entire city, and I will say attendance was low. For whatever reason, we are competing with a lot of projects that are happening and folks didn't show up, but more people showed up online. It's just different how we engage. People find it easier to hop on a phone call and plug in. But it's really important to really, if we're coming to your community, to really kind of show up for these projects if you can. Next slide. And folks asked about whether or how we determine these 14 geographies, and it's based on census tracts, which is established by the government, all that good stuff. What it does help us to do is to track how we spend money, how land use decisions are being made, and to see what changes we need to make in the future. So there's a lot of confusion oftentimes, and I don't, if I didn't do this every day, I'd be confused as well as to what this work does as opposed to what some legal work. So the plans inform decision making, but they don't create regulations or law. So if you see someone in your community talking about a plan, that doesn't change your zoning automatically. That's not that's a separate process. So feel free and do still engage, but it could in the future, but it doesn't change it automatically. It identifies where public and private investment should go. If you pay attention to the city's budget process, they often talk about council priorities, and that's where the money's being spent. That is what they use these plans that we're developing now to help make those decisions as to where to spend city dollars. Also, private sector investments, where you have developers or folks that own property, and you yourself can decide how you want to invest and leverage city investments based on the stuff that we're working on now. So it does matter, but what it doesn't do, the work that we're doing now, doesn't automatically fund something overnight. It takes a little bit of time. Like I mentioned about the zoning, it may say, hey, changes might be recommended, but it won't change your zoning. And then it guides development, but it won't stop development. So it's important to know what a plan will do and won't do. Remember, the plan sets the vision, the zoning sets the law. Next slide, Steve. Thank you. So here's the process I mentioned about community area planning. It's 5 phases. We've done phase 1 and 2 with the help from the community to talk about what types of places you want to see. In September of this year, we will have workshops to talk about, yes, this is our vision, but what are some of the projects, sidewalks, streets, all these other things to help make our community great? What types of projects and programs do we need to make the vision real? And so it's great to say I want this type of place, but if you're not talking about how to invest in it to make it happen, what are we really talking about? And so when you see the announcements about the meeting locations come next month in a couple of weeks, please sign up and please show up to share your voice about what needs to happen to make the vision for what we want to see in the future come to life. The next final phases is putting the plans together. We're writing them all in-house, and then go before our city council members to seek or to review and adoption. That's also a critical part of the process where you all have a voice with your elected officials, and you can also show up to the meetings, at the council meetings, and share your opinions, good or bad. Please be encouraged to share either way. Next slide. So this is how, so the policy map, I mentioned as soon as the plans were done, the comprehensive plan was adopted, we also adopted a policy map. This is where we take those big ideas about the types of places, and when developers, property owners, and the community decide they want to do something, they use this map as a guide. So this is part of the community area planning process as well, extremely important. So as I mentioned, development decisions aren't made overnight. It starts now, and your involvement in this process to share what you think should happen in the future is really, really important. And this map is an important part of that. And it also, next slide, Steve, connects to the zoning ordinance, which is the first time that the city's ever done this. Have the planning documents and place types directly connect to the zoning district. So if you have a place type or type of place that talks about your neighborhood, there's a list of zoning regulations that directly connect to that. So there's no question about what the zoning type is, the rules that will make your neighborhood happen, how those things connect. And this is to help the community to understand what those connections are, to be transparent about it, and to also make it easy for decision makers and investors to develop in our community. Next slide. So I mentioned the engagement process. I mentioned we had 42 workshops, or almost 500 folks showed up. A little bit of under 900 comments were collected. And I mentioned the virtual platforms were really, really successful. If you look at the numbers and the amount of people we have in our community, that's a drop in the bucket. They're calling in, volunteer to come to a meeting, that's what's going on. And so we really want you all to partake in the process and be engaged. This is just a drop in the bucket. As I mentioned, change happens locally first, and this is a process to get involved in changing and making sure that the community serves you in the future. Next slide. The comment period, we have the map that starts review in February. We open it. There's a second round of providing comments on that map that starts in June. We'll send out information to get more involved in that. But please make sure you participate in the process and provide comments. Well, we're in July. That date is wrong. All right, so we're starting another round in September. So here's the process again for engagement. There's a lot of words on here, but what's the purpose of this graphic is to really show how we started in 2021, and that the ways that you engage in this process are the same way we've been using engagement platforms for the past 5 years, and that's on purpose. That's to make sure that it's easy for people to connect to the information. If you go to our website, it's still the same. If you go to our Instagram page, it's still the same. The information is in the same place. So no matter where you are and when you decide to enter into the process, the engagement platforms are all the same. Next slide. So the next steps in the process, next slide, Steve, are this fall I mentioned that there will be another series of workshops in September. And then again, we'll start releasing the draft documents in late winter. We haven't quite settled on those dates. I think it's the first week of September is when we have those workshops. We'll make sure that you all have those dates on your calendars. But it's really important to get involved if you're online, if you need to email me or someone on my team. CLTfuture2040.com is our website. You can sign up for notifications or anything to make sure that you're engaged in the process. Next slide. So at the end of the day, why should you care? I wanted to put this slide in here because you hear these presentations all the time, you see this information all the time. And what I want to leave with you are words of encouragement that this is a very unique and transformative time in our community. A lot of things are happening, but they're happening at once, and they're speaking to each other. In the past, definitely when I started within the community, with the city of Charlotte, our work was happening, but a lot of it didn't speak to each other. So we were developing policy and regulations and then deciding how to spend the money. But the way that things are happening now, they're all speaking to each other. So when you share your information or share your feedback or your concerns, they influence all of those things that are happening within the city. The other thing I want to make sure I leave you all with is that you can influence development years before it happens. There are conversations now, and I know you guys are watching the news about the red line, the silver line, transit, and I'm just using this as an example. We started talking about the transit system back in the late 1990s. And so it takes that long and it takes that much intention and investment in the ideas for things to happen. So if they're talking about it now, show up. It does matter because you may not see it in our lifetime or you may not see it happen overnight, but those conversations matter today because it informs how things will shake out in the future. So when you see those meetings come up in your inbox, please attend. Your voice does matter. And as I mentioned, the purse follows the policy and the priorities. What you say matters to you and how you influence the policy, which is used by folks to make decisions, determines the purse. Like, where does the money go? And so that part really matters. And so when you think no one's listening, how council develops the budget, working with your elected officials, again, who you elect matters. Let's be very clear about that. All those things are connected. So I wanted to leave you guys with some words of encouragement around making sure that you're involved, your voice does matter, and that it really influences the priorities and how we spend money in the future. And with that, I'll stop with questions.
Before we go into questions, Ms. Osborne,
Yes.
would you please, especially because we have a lot of young people in the room,
Yes.
just explain what your position is, what your department is, and what you actually do?
Okay, thanks for that question. So I work in the City of Charlotte's Planning, Design, and Development Department. Say that 5 times twice. And what we do is a little bit, there are 7 divisions within our department, and I run the long range planning division. The other divisions are tree, canopy and preservation, land development, which looks at our day-to-day development activities, entitlement services, which looks at what folks on the ground, what they have rules to build and how to change those rules around how they develop their land. Urban design and preservation, that's how you design buildings and communities and how do you preserve historic things within the community. We also have transportation planning, which is our regional planning functions that look at how we connect roads and highways, not just in Mecklenburg County, but a county region, a 10 county region. And then I work in the long range, which is the group that looks at planning 20, 30, 40 years out. So when I talk about that transit line that's running now in South End that everybody loves, when they were talking about it in the 90s, folks was like, I don't know if that's gonna happen or if that's real. So the things that you see in your neighborhood, your subdivision or shopping malls and South Park and all these other places, they were thought of 20, 30 years ahead of time. So that's what my division particularly does, and that's look at how we should grow over time using data and maps and working with the community to help inform those decisions that council and our elected and appointed officials use to make decisions.
Thank you so much. As Tuesday morning forum tradition, Tommy Robinson has the first question.
Yeah. My question is, I'm very concerned because, like, do they have more businesses under segregation, or do they have more businesses under integration? Because I remember as a kid, we had 4 restaurants in South Side, now they don't have 1. So I'm wondering about the development of business, because when I was in school, they said America was a capitalist society. So capital means business.
Yeah, I would say today, thank you for that question, Mr. Robinson. I would say there are programs that are trying to help small businesses start, stay, and grow. There are more programs today than when I started 20 years ago, for sure. And specifically, there are some, and this is a whole other department, so I may just have to connect you with someone that does it every day. But what I will say is that there are programs specifically targeting Black businesses and funding. And a good example would be in our corridors of opportunity work. Batesford Road is one of those designated corridors. They are supporting and being real intentional about preserving and supporting Black businesses to that corridor. And then as the area or the community grows, they're looking at, I know we're talking about it along Independence, with the Silver Line happens, how do we make sure that there are small business opportunities there when the line comes down Independence and go to the airport, similar to what happened in South End. We weren't as intentional in the past as we are now. I will say that. So you're exactly right. It's not as intentional as it need to be back in the day, but we're trying to do better and have some programs specifically focused on that.
Mr. Combs.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. I came in a very good mood, and it has quickly eroded. But I'm glad that you're here because you perhaps can answer the question better than someone who has a political bent and has failed to address the issue. There are restaurants, bars, clubs all over the city of Charlotte that have virtually no parking. There is a project that could be up and operating inside, according to the developer, 18 to 24 months, if he were able to meet the city's parking requirement and zoning requirement for 20 additional parking spaces. I also understand that our city councilman from that district is supportive of a procedure or a process to support a dine-in restaurant virtually across the street from this Excelsior Club that could be up and operating in 2 years. And the project that he is endorsing, supporting, would be 10 to 15 years down the road by your own admission in regards to light rail and how long it takes to get it on board. Can you please explain to me how it is from a staffing position, and I know it would require a zoning change, which the city has consistently failed to give, to allow or to eliminate that requirement for those 20 parking spaces to bring online a development project that the community and the city have all said we want to see operable, and a developer who is ready to continue and complete the project, the Excelsior Club. Can you please explain to me how people operate with no parking, bigger crowds, and this one operation that has limited occupancy and only needs 20 spaces, and you're all holding them up?
Mr. Combs trying to get me to lose my whole job. Because I'm very familiar with the project, and I'm very familiar with the politics of the project, and I'm also familiar with the technical parts of the project. So a couple of things in your remarks and in your question that I want to address. First, the development that is on the table that the owner has proposed has to meet the development standards of that zoning district, no matter where you are in the city. It's the same across the city. The places that you're talking about that have no parking requirements or very little parking requirements have a different zoning. You are right that if there is a zoning change, that there may be a possibility of not having or elimination of parking. Zoning changes are at the request of the property owner. He has to file it. Staff provides an opinion. City council makes the decision, not staff. I want to make that very, very clear. Staff does not make decisions on rezoning petitions. That is not our role. That is not legally legislate all that. That's not us. We provide our technical expert opinion as to whether this petition or this development meets those standards or not. The decision is at the power of city council. So to that I will say, we're not holding up anything. That I will say in terms of a decision, because the decision is not ours to make. But I do understand that it's so technical in terms of the lot size, what's required, how much building he has to do and wants to do to make the numbers pencil. It's a very difficult process to understand and to make happen. In light of wanting to meet all the community needs as well, because it's not just any kind of development. This is historic and monumental and can change a lot along the corridor. So there's a lot of things that need to happen to make sure it's the right kind of development. But I just wanted to be clear and make sure you understood that it's not us as a staff person that makes that rezoning decision. I mean, I think there's more discussions to be had as to how to close that gap between what the standards are requiring and what the developer's trying to do. But the petition can be filed if the property owner files it, and then council makes the decision. We just make a recommendation.
Jay Hill.
Thank you, sir. Alysia?
Yes.
Hey, I'm Jay Hill. So I am a part of the West Boulevard Neighborhood Coalition, and recently the ASC Arts and Science Council was there talking about an art project that they're going to do on West Boulevard. I also know about the corridors of opportunity as well, and I know that West Boulevard is a part of that. Can you talk about the 2040 plan and how the corridors of opportunity are integrated in that? And then also, along with that, we were having a discussion with the representatives from ASC about how can local businesses and people in that corridor be involved in the project. So you talked about people showing up and giving their feedback, but is there a process to allow others or folks from the community to be a part of that work, like the great Tommy Robinson, my dad, William Hill Jr., who are artists? Can local folks get involved in that effort?
So the corridors of opportunity work and the 2040 plan are directly connected. So the work that they're doing, boots on the ground, have money, a pot of money that they're making some very targeted investments in the community aligns with the vision of the plan. And the corridors opportunity folks are on our team and vice versa. So we're always talking to each other to make sure that we understand what the community is facing and need today as we're looking in the future. So they're very connected in terms of the work and direction. In terms of how to get involved, West Boulevard Coalition is not a question about involvement. They are always there. We appreciate their commitment. They show up and they show up in numbers, and they always, if they can't show up, they provide their feedback in writing. And so anyone can do that. And the same way that that group is engaged, anyone can get involved. So visit our website, cltfuture2040.com. You can always sign up at the bottom of the page. There's a sign up form. We use that form, and not just that, but other ways to reach out to people, 44 different ways to be exact, to reach out to folks. But we use that to send out emails, we respond on social, we do in-person things, posters, door hangers, yard signs. We try to reach people in the best way that we know that they need to be reached. And then if we can't, we're open to ideas about how that can happen. But thank you for the question.
Good morning, Ms. Osborne. It's Alysia. So my question is more about order of operations. I remember when I was in college in the early 2000s, I remember coming home, months at a time and realizing that some of my childhood friends were just swaths of them were gone. I didn't know what that meant at the time as I grew up in Wilmore. Wilmore is a very different community than it is now. I remember one of my neighbors, Mr. Greer's home, sold for $90,000. And I thought that was insane because all of this time before, it's like, you can get this house $20,000. It was worthless. We were conditioned to believe these homes were worthless. And during this time, while our community was shifting, it seems like upwardly mobile Black people were largely migrating to the university area, Highland Creek, I believe, and communities like that. Today, if that $90,000 went to purchase one of those homes in the university area, probably about a respectable $400,000 in today's market. However, those homes in Wilmore, $600,000, $700,000, $800,000. So after the plan is implemented, when does it all start? How does it take place? What drives particular market forces towards directions? Like, how does it all happen? How does, again, because it happens in sections and
Right.
in mass.
In ways, yeah, you're right. And I too, Winston, I didn't grow up in Charlotte. I grew up in Mississippi, so I know all too well how certain kind of market forces or investments can flip a whole neighborhood and a whole community just like that. And so what I would say, to keep what to watch out for changes or big changes in the community, I would say follow the investment. If there is something planned today, like a red line, that's believed the investment is gonna follow. There will be change along
Point of clarity, you're not talking about the racism red line, right? Okay.
I know.
No. The train. That type of red line.
No, you don't even want to know the conversation I had about it. Anyway, the commuter rail line, let's say that, we won't give a code. The commuter rail line that they're talking about today, and I use this as an example because it's not just a $5 investment, it's a $25 investment, it's huge. And so you can expect some kind of significant change to happen along those types of investments. A good example would be streetcar. In West Side, like we, not just me at the city, but the community knew that it was coming and what that change would look like. It wouldn't look exactly like South End, but it would be something different. And so one thing I would say is what we're trying to do better at the city, and me in my personal time, and what you do waking up, breathing it every day, is educate people about the value that they have and where they are. Some people might not see it. So you have to talk to them about, all right, I know you have this and it may seem like it's not valuable today, but in the future it will be. If you don't want it, then what about your kids? Like, how do you talk about that generational wealth and investment in where you are in place and how that transcends time? And so what the work that you do and what we're trying to do at the city is create programs to help people understand and to help them stay where they are, businesses and housing. And then so when that investment comes, they're set. But there's so many other things that play into where people decide to live beyond just housing. You know what I mean? I think growing up in Mississippi, I was taught that wealth looked like a certain thing. And then that thing didn't necessarily look like me. And so me being my 47-year-old self now knows that I've been rich all my life. Whether I had a lot of money or not, I had family, we had community, I knew my neighbors, I could walk to school, I could walk to the store. Like, their wealth is defined beyond just the purse. It's all these other things that are intangible that creates community that I had growing up, that sometimes we're not taught are valuable things or assets. And I think just talking about that more and really sharing that where you live is great, but all these other things make community, and that you have a lot of that where you are. How do we protect it and grow it? And I know that probably didn't answer your question, but just, I felt like I had to say that. Because I mean, we were all on this journey trying to figure out how to live our best lives and how to make sure we leave this place better than we find it, and then instill that into the next generation of folks. And it's not always just about the house you live in. That's important, don't get me wrong. I love my little house in Park Oaklawn. I love it. It's my first house, might be my last, but I love it. But I love my neighbor across the street. I love that I got a rec center, and I love that I know folks I can walk to Camp North Day, and I can walk these different places. That value is not just in the structure, it's in everything around it too. And the more we teach people that and share our stories about it, I think they'll see what they have is more valuable than what folks are telling them.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gary Young.
Yep. Now, another question. question. That's part of another. Good morning.
Hey, Gary. I'm so good right now. I survived. Mr. Robinson, Mr. Coombs, I don't know.
No, first question I had was, when I walked in, you were speaking a little bit about, staff makes recommendations, but council ultimately makes the decision.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak a little bit about the UDO Board of Adjustment versus city making zoning decisions and how the two differentiate or coincide with one another?
Oh, Lord, that's very technical. So I think the Board of Adjustments, there are certain, and it's an extension or of the UDO Board of Adjustments is an extension of the Zoning Board of Adjustment, where there's some administrative things that you can change, or some things that have been a hardship, or something else that's extremely legal. I don't know all the ins and outs of it. What I will say is that it's not to change from one district to the next, it's to make adjustments within that district that people already have, and they have to meet certain criteria. And so it's quasi-judicial, meaning that folks already have the legal rights that they can do something, they're making some type of administrative deviation. But there's certain criteria that people have to meet. The difference is that council's work with the rezoning, that's completely a legislative action that they have the power to do. They have statutory power from that's granted by the state to make those types of decisions. And that's when you're making big changes from one thing to the other. Like if you're going from, if I have a house that's in residential, but everything around me is business, then I want to change my house or change it over to a small business, I can request that. Or if it's something off the wall, like something totally different, a property owner has the right to request a change, and that goes before council to make a decision. I'm sure I messed up the whole UDO adjustment thing. I will get you to somebody that knows it better. But the big picture is that the actions are very, very different.
Now that I'm hearing the cases and hearing you explain it.
Yeah, it's very different.
Ms. Natalie.
Good morning, and thank you for being here. It saddens me that you had 42 meetings across Charlotte with an average of 10 people attending, mostly because there are a lot of people, I'm sure, that would have loved to have been at that meeting. And I would suggest that you hire Winston, who knows how to bring a crowd out, to format those meetings, because apparently nobody is advertising them properly or doing what is necessary to get people to attend. I think you need to maybe come up with a very big budget where you can send out a flyer and make it seem a lot more interesting than what's going to happen in 40 years. But it seemed to be a very big waste of resources to have 42 meetings with only an average of 10 people attending. Something needs to be done, and Winston knows how to get people out.
I will take an extra check. Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you.
Chicken wings work.
Tommy Robinson again.
If I don't remember the question. Like, what concerned me is like businesses. I remember as a kid, Batesford Road. What happened to the black communities? You know, like Third Ward, Brooklyn, Batesford Road. You know, what happened to them? Where did these people go?
They showed them.
I think he answered the question. What did you say?
Yeah, I think the synopsis of that question is like even before my dad's generation, there were plenty of black communities, Blue Haven, Brooklyn,
right?
Out by Piedmont Supermarket, Baltimore, that Dixie, that just do not exist anymore. And where do black communities go in the shuffle of planning, or how do they get displaced? How can black communities be protected?
Yeah, I think you mentioned Batesford Road. I think a lot of the work that is happening now is actually creating a model for how to do it across the city.
White business?
A lot of them are black though. I would say, there's some that have been there, and you have to, and the issue is, and I'll be, just keep it 100. You have to own where you are. And ownership looks different for different people. And what's that gap from where you are and how you get to where you own. And so infusing capital and helping people to obtain capital to be able to own where they are is the only way you can keep them in place.
So,
and so what's the math behind that? If I had the answer to that question, Mr. Ross, I would solve gentrification across the country. But I do know that there are some programs that are helping people to locate on the Bay 4 corridor, and some helping some people to stay. Is it perfect? No. Is it where we want it to be? Absolutely not. But I will say that I've seen some progress, especially in the past 20 years, and being intentional about the money that's being spent.
Dr. Blanchard.
Good morning. I'm glad Natalie said something about the meeting and with this plan, which I didn't get a chance to go to any of them. Normally I'll go to some. But the concern I have is a lot of times when they're always talking about Beta Fort Road, Hidden Valley, and all of this. So how can we structure or make sure that we're all getting into this action? Because in my neighborhood, I'm right off in the university area. I don't see a lot of stuff going on. And so how can we make sure that everybody's getting a piece of the pie in order to make everything work for all of us, not just some of us?
Right, and I appreciate that question. So what the city is doing now, particularly my department, and with this work that we're working on, we have something called the Equitable Growth Framework. So it puts where we've not been equitable around making decisions in terms of housing, job opportunities, employment, job opportunities, housing options, and how people get around in environmental justice. So it puts like data to the narrative. And so as we are trying to talk about future growth, is looking at those places, for example, that don't have grocery stores. How do we make sure we put the land use policy and investment from the city's perspective in those areas so they can get a grocery store? So we're looking at it from a perspective of how do we address the needs and the priorities of different places in different ways, and making sure the policy and the programs actually are placed in those areas, which is different than before. It was, I will say, a lot of policy or investment decisions were made based on the squeaky wheel or other factors. But now we're looking at who needs it the most, what are the priority areas, and how do we make sure to get to those places.
All right, we got Ken and Garrett, and I have a question. No. Glenn. Oh, I'm sorry, Glenn.
I have to break the rule. I know you had one rule earlier. You gotta break this a little bit. So I came to Charlotte in 2001, 2002. I'm originally from Atlanta. And so I came here because I wanted to hear at least first, you let it work. But we've seen what's transpired over the last 20 plus years in Charlotte. I think it's really important to highlight what's transpired in other metropolitan cities like Charlotte, such as Atlanta, whereby in Atlanta now, the majority of the corridors that come from inner city out have been gentrified. And my family grew up in one of those communities. We had the homes sold for $30,000 in 1984. Now they sell for $1.2 million. And the same thing is happening here. I respect, at least kind of being from this city, like kind of the perspective, right? And I think that's definitely a heavily meaningful perspective to have. When it comes to assets in the bank and in the trust, though, I think, the trust that we create for our families I think it's important to be very cognizant of the fact that our young people of color, specifically in Charlotte, are going to have a challenge, because when I came in 2002, there were probably 3 or 4 corridors that were corridors of color that came from inner city out. Gary, tell me how many corridors.
You're gonna have to speed it up.
I'm sorry. I apologize. I just think the perspective is just that we have to get our young people more involved now, along with how the city is moving forward, because the corridors are shrinking. Period. That's why I brought my son here today, because I want him to at least be in the room.
So the question is, how do we get young people involved with planning?
So part of
We have some more youth we might want to recognize.
Oh, Dr. Blanche Penn, thank you for bringing the youngins.
Stand and have them.
We will. We'll get to them a lot.
So a part of the program, or part of the work in reaching out, is we do have youth on our team that develops the engagement for young folks. And a lot of the engagement that we've done has been through CMS. We use Charlotte Youth Council, Generation Nation, to help us to really understand what the youth in the community want. So this past summer, the end of the school year, we had a youth and planning day. We did a youth boot camp. We also work with youth, UNC Charlotte. We have some engagement this week with Johnson C. Smith, just really trying to get people to understand. And at these meetings, it's not just the grown folk. We got kids that come with their parents, and we have things for them to do to share what their ideas are about the community. It looks the conversation and what we have for them are designed by young folks for young folks. So it ain't just me trying to decide what a kid needs. It's people their own age having that conversation. So when you come to the 42 meetings, it won't be 42 this time, but there will be a meeting that we share on the radio, TV, because this is how we got it out. Like, we use all of it and showed it at the Vibe Call Fresh and all these other places. People just got to be interested too and share. If they can't do it, bring somebody else with you. And these were meetings that were held on Saturday, Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and the kids were there too. So just because you come, don't think you can't bring your kids, because you can. And we offer childcare and transportation if you need it. You just have to request and interpreters, whatever you need to be at this meeting to provide your voice. Just tell us what you need, and we'll make sure you get there, that you have childcare, that you have a pass. We have Uber, Lyft codes, everything. So you just gotta put that in the thing and say, hey, this is what I need to be able to come, because we offer all of that if you want to participate.
Now, we have officials from CMS in here, I believe. Land acquisition, is it? With CMS?
Planning services for CMS.
Well, yeah, will there be alignment there, so the students who are in CMS schools could be more part of the process? You can meet people where they are?
I'll let you know. This is my 5th day on the job.
Thank you so much. Mr. Combs?
I'm about to say, she just got hired because I saw that position.
We need some on the street kids coming into some of these meetings too. I'm sick and tired.
Oh, not Dr. Penn, you know better. Oh, Dr. Penn. All right, Mr. Combs.
She gave a perfect segue with my comment, which is, I'm sick and tired too. I'm sick and tired about this issue of gentrification, because gentrification couldn't happen if we didn't sell the land. They can't come in and take your land. Young folk leave, don't come back because they're going to get a good job and live out there where they ain't necessarily wanted. So forget about gentrification. The other thing about gentrification is you got a big university sitting right over there on the top of the hill on the west side. Had 4 administrations that could have bought land around them, and they didn't buy 6 square feet of land, and now they can't buy 6 square inches of land because gentrification has come in and taken it all. Now, who's responsible for that? The very colored folk and Negroes who own the land from the start. My question is to you,
you said about the zoning districts. Councilperson Graham says that the Excelsior developer may have a better chance of getting his zoning that he requires under this new 2040 plan, which includes TOD zoning, travel-oriented development. And under the old plan, that's why he was not able to develop, because of the zoning. And my question to you was earlier, when you said that the developer has never come and sought the zoning. I'm not sure that that's accurate. Maybe he sought the zoning under the old plan and was turned down.
Is that a question?
Yes, it is.
Because I will say this, I didn't say he did not seek the zoning. I said he has to apply for the zoning he wants. Whether it's the old rules or the new rules. Mm-hmm. He has to apply and council has to make that decision.
That's the process.
Old rules and new rules. And the UDO, the Unified Development Ordinance, are the zoning rules that I talked about. That's the rules. The work that I'm talking about is the vision that connects to the rules. So his questions are about the zoning, the legal stuff. And to change that from what you have today, if you seek a change in your zoning, you have to apply, and then it goes through a process where staff makes a recommendation, there's a community meeting, all those things, and then council ultimately makes that decision. But the process begins with a conversation with the elected officials and the community about what you want to do. You file your application for the zoning change. That starts the official process of reviewing the development that the property owner or whoever, the agent or whoever they hire to represent them, that starts the actual process for a zoning change. And right now, because we have a new ordinance and the old ordinance, I'm not sure if it's still in effect, I'm not sure about the dates, the rules are different. He can apply for the rules to change, but he has to apply for that change.
All right, we have Gary, myself, Mr. Majid, Senator Majid, Representative Majid, then Ms. Edwards-Walton.
When you alluded to a little earlier about, everybody knew what was going on with the goal line when it was being built, and we see what Wesley Heights looks like now. It doesn't look like what it looked like when I was growing up. In that vein, if you can you elaborate or speak on some of the idealistic plans for the Base 4 corridor that the city has in mind for when that goal line continues to expand? Because as you alluded to, development is going to occur because of that notion in itself. And I know of some things I've heard of that's come.
But keep it real here. Wesley Heights started changing in the 90s, 80s, and 90s. Like that ownership started changing way before the trend and stuff. Might have been before then, because when I moved here, I rode through Wesley Heights, and it was not the Wesley Heights I had learned about in school. So the change happened way before the investment came. But to your point, your question, phase 3, the goal line is built in 3 phases. That's the streetcar line, 3 phases. Phase 1 was over here by CPCC, the hospital, and then phase 2 was what we have today. And then there's another phase envisioned to go past Johnson C. Smith out to, I'm not sure if it's 85, but maybe Sunset. It's a little bit far. And so that's always been a discussion, but I think confirmed in the recent plan, transit plan, to have the phase 3 on the table to talk about. What that means is that the work that's happening now with corridors and within the neighborhoods is extremely important to set people up for when change happens, when that road comes, when the actual train starts, that people are set in that we have the types of businesses that we want, neighborhoods are a little more stable in the ownership, but to Mr. Coon's point, people sell it. If they sell, there's nothing that the city can do to stop a real estate transaction between 2 private parties. Like if I own my house, the city can't stop me from selling it to you or to somebody else that don't look like you. I think that's a real thing that we have to understand.
City has grown 20.
Oh, Gary.
That's a real thing that we have to understand.
Gary.
I know he got a rebuttal.
We're getting short on time. We need you to ask your question. Less commentary. Ask your question and then try to keep your answers short.
He's like, we got plans. The plan is.
All right.
To have mixed use development on the front.
Representative Eugene.
I'm
All
sorry.
right. Let's bring it back. Representative Eugene.
Thank you, Mr. Mr. Coombs, you asked some very poignant questions, but it all boils down to it's 5 votes, it's majority on county commission, it's 6 votes, a majority on city council. I don't care what you got. If you got 6 votes, I mean, they have variances, you have additional zonings, you have, and they vote again. I know you're aware of this. So, and they vote, they don't also always take the planning commission's recommendations. But I tell you what, based on that 6 votes. 6 votes, I don't care what's in the books, it's done deal. If you can work from that angle, then you don't have to worry about that. But that albeit that you get those 6 votes. Thank you.
Mr. Edwards Walton.
Alysia, can you speak to the accessory dwelling units to just kind of change the topics a little bit?
So there is a type of housing.
You might put your mic up.
Yeah, I'm sorry. There's a type of housing that has been around for years, and a lot of people take advantage of it, where you can have another smaller house on your property. If you meet the development standards, if you have enough space on your property, you can use it to provide an accessory dwelling unit. Why it's called accessory is it's not as big as the principal unit, which is the larger house. And so that's always been in the ordinance. The zoning ordinance or the development standards, the reason that people are bringing it up today more is that it provides for some families another form of affordable housing. Say if I have that much land and I want to build something for my mom, instead of building a whole entire house, I can build an accessory unit in the back of my house. They call them mother-in-law suites or that kind of thing. You can build on your house, on your land, if you have enough land to do it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So it's back on me. My question is about operations. There's so many things around this. One, I've seen multiple plans throughout years. Center City Partners, CMHP just had one from the 90s that was featured in Axios a couple of days ago. Multiple plans. CATS has a plan. How do you know which plans to follow? When do they start after all of the data collection? And how do you know which plans will be adopted?
So here's what I would say, and that's a good question because it is a lot. I would say to that, if I'm just an average citizen and not doing planning for a living, that all of those plans speak together. And the work that we're doing points to all of them. So a comprehensive plan is just that, the blueprint, and it includes all and connected to all those other plans. Planning never stops. So when one project, if there's a transit plan, they have 2030, they had 2005, the comp plan was the first one in 50 years. There was one back in the 70s, and then CATS has a plan, and housing has a plan. Everybody's got a plan, But what we make sure is that as city departments, we're all speaking to each other and that they all connect. So as we're talking about what type of neighborhoods and what type of uses you want, Cass is also at the table talking about what type of transit is there today and what they plan for the future. And we're receiving feedback. So when you come to me or come to these meetings that we have, and you're talking about, well, that would be nice to have a transit stop here, or if we're gonna have light rail or streetcar, we should have these type of uses in the area. We're all talking to each other, and those people are in the room as well. The Center City Plan, same thing. Adopted policy for the city of Charlotte is adopted by council, city council. So the Center City Plan was adopted. CATS plan, because CATS is a regional authority, their plan is adopted by the Metropolitan Transit Commission. So that's a regional organization where all the towns and CATS all in the city of Charlotte sit on, but they all speak to each other. So when you see us at a meeting and it's like 30, 40 staff people, you're like, why are these people here? That's so if you need to ask a question from someone at the airport about noise overlays or noise in your neighborhood, they're in the meeting as well. Airport has a plan, right? Their expansion. We connected at work to make sure that we make sure the community knows this is what the airport is looking like in terms of their future, where they plan to go, where these additional runways might go, what the impacts might be. Like we're all talking to each other, and it never really stops. But what we try to do is, and it's particularly with our process, is make sure that people have the opportunity to speak to all pieces at one time. So we're meeting online or in person or on a Saturday at a bike fest or at a bike called Fresh. You tell me something, you tell a member of my team or tell our department something, best believe it's getting back to the other people. Even with the county, we still have CMS, Park and Rec, and County Health Services, all of them are at our meetings as well. We make sure we connect during work, but it never really stops. Because people change, things are changing so fast in the community. You can't say, oh goodness, we did that plan, let's sit down for a minute.
So how does the adaptation work or the adjustment? For example, you mentioned the success of the rail line in South End. However, the gold line in the West End we have lower rider engagement because we don't have those supportive elements like parking structures where people can park and ride. Yeah. And we all, as single family communities, right. Single family residences alone, making it not that convenient to engage the rail line. So now that planning phase got us the rail line, what does it look like to now add those supportive elements to create a more conducive ridership for?
With each phase or with each process or each big thing like a transit line, you finish it, but along the way you're learning lessons, right? And you don't want to make the same mistakes, or you want to replicate the successes from one project to the next. You want to talk about it. So we document and collect data. We're still learning from the blue line. And depending on who you ask, I would say as a planner that it's doing a good thing. It connects people to the things they need in their community, provides an improved environment, provides another way of means of transportation, all those good things. But then you could talk to some of the neighborhoods, the neighborhoods that have been adversely impacted, like a Wilmore neighborhood that's significantly changed, and they may say it's a bad thing. So you want to make sure as you're building or thinking about that next thing that you're learning each time and making sure that we're talking about it. So as we talk about the Silver Line, there's a huge component through a grant from the federal government around equity. It's called Equitable TOD. And it's looking at, before we even buy a piece of land, build anything, how do we make sure that the businesses and the people along this corridor are able to experience this new investment that's coming, which is very different than the mindset when we did the Blue Line. And also with streetcars, same thing. We'll look at how whatever we have now with phase 2, how do we do it differently and better in phase 3? But that all starts with people showing up and sharing their experiences and what they have experience in the community to inform the process. The data can only tell us half of the story. The people showing up in the meetings and sharing what they experience and their feedback is the other piece that's oftentimes missing.
Ms. McClellan?
Okay, my question is in reference to, and you may have alluded to this earlier, the rapid growth. Is it rapid or was it planned for? Now, the 2040, what are we looking at in terms of population, not for Mecklenburg County, but for the city of Charlotte? Do we know what growth would have occurred with us growing so rapidly right now? I see a lot of trees going down and a lot of buildings going up all over Charlotte. So that speaks volume about the expectations. So in terms of the influx of the people moving to Charlotte and the planning, the role that the planning department has with that, not just for certain communities, but for the entire Charlotte community. And if you can give us, if you can tell us, I haven't looked at the 2040, what we estimate Charlotte populations to be in 2040. And is part of these buildings and these apartments and these leasing communities going up, adding to what we see in terms of what lies ahead of us in population for the city?
That's a good question. Thank you for asking that. I would say that the first slide of my presentation talked about the expected growth when we started the plan in 2021. There's the census is one way of looking at it, but there's this super technical process that's called the regional growth model that looks at projections of how our region will grow over time, and Charlotte has a portion of that growth. And what it says is that in the next 20 years, we will have an additional 400,000 residents and I think 200-some-thousand more jobs that is expected to grow. We're in the process right now to update those numbers, because what you expect and what actually happens, you kind of have to close that gap to make sure the numbers are more accurate. But we are expected to grow that much and have a pretty good idea of how much growth we should expect and where that growth should happen and where investment needs to happen in terms of infrastructure, schools, and that kind of thing to support it. The problem, I think, that a lot of us, or the issue, the challenge we have, is when that growth or land development happens outside of where we expect it. And so that happens through the rezoning process and through some major land acquisitions, and somebody developed something that we weren't expecting, beyond our control, I would say. And so that's when you start to see bigger issues and bigger challenges and growth expectations and our ability to serve that growth, if that makes sense. And so what I would say is that the data, again, tells us one thing, but tell us how it will grow. But when things actually happen in real time, we're keeping track of that too, and then making sure we're updating those numbers so we have a good grasp of what to expect and how to service it. And it's not just roads, it's not just housing, it's water, sewer, replanting of trees. Like, are we doing those things to make sure we maintain the quality of life?
All right, Sean.
Thanks, Alysia. Thanks, Alysia, for coming. Thanks, Alysia, for coming. My question is not really related to planning per se, but how is Center City Partners funded? Is it a tax? Because it looks like they're located in South End. They've got the ambassadors that go around Charlotte really promoting that area. And yet, I don't necessarily see them coming on our side, on the west side. So those geographical, what are their geographical boundaries?
On is this. So Center City Partners is a municipal services district, and its boundaries are, I have to give you a map to show you, but it does include South End, a little bit of Midtown, and it doesn't include Camp North End, but I think it stops right at 77. And so what that municipal service district is, and it's a whole legal process where the property owners within that district have decided to give themselves a special tax to fund different services, and they outline what those services should be. There are three municipal service districts in Charlotte. University City has one, University City Partners, and now South Park Partners. But it is a legal process where they've decided that they want to be in this boundary, want to have a special tax to provide certain services like marketing, ambassador program, and maybe landscaping, like some very operational type things, and then work with the city as a partner to do development, business recruitment, and events and all that kind of stuff. So how they expand their boundaries or change their boundaries is a whole public process. It is not them or any one of those MSDs deciding that they want to do it. It's a whole another legal public process that has to happen. That goes before council, and council has to approve it again. We don't decide as staff, but council makes that decision. What do they use in terms of criteria and considerations? I'm not 100% sure on that, but just know that it's a public process.
It almost looks like.
Wait. We used to have it though, right? That's how I met you. Was it on the west side a little bit?
Nope.
Ms. Walton.
Years ago, they kind of started that process with Mecca Properties. Those of you who may remember Mecca Properties during South End when they did the tax. But my question is similar to what Laura's was. With the growing number of persons who are becoming seniors, do you know those numbers coming into the Charlotte area, and how things will have to change because folk aren't having quite as many children, but baby boomers are growing, moving into the city?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't have that number off the top of my head. I don't have those numbers of the aging population and the influx of those individuals that are moving to Charlotte. We work closely with the county, and they have a plan, let's get the name wrong, that really focuses on the aging population. And so I think it's age-friendly Mecklenburg. I think that's it. So when we were our development plans with Charlotte Future 2040, as well as our area plans, we're partnering with the county to make sure that we are aligning with creating not just a community of new people or younger people, but also the next generation and folks like me that'll be older in the future. And where can what types of services do people need? How do they need to connect to those goods and services? Really having an 8 to 80 approach of how we build a community of the future. So we're all connected in the policy work and the programs and projects to make sure that happens.
All right, Logan, you're gonna close it out for us with the question.
Hi, my name is Logan, and I'm 16 years old. I've lived in Charlotte my whole life, and I noticed that since I live off of Betty's Ford Road, and I went to Hornets Nest Elementary School, and I also went to Branson IB, and my home school would be West Charlotte, I believe, if I didn't go to Hawthorne. And I noticed that a lot of the kids that I grew up around and that I went to school with, they tend to not have a lot of opportunities that the school doesn't provide them. I noticed that there's not a lot of small businesses around that could give them potential jobs, and we usually have to go to jobs around the city, or we have to go off of Betty's Ford in order to find a job that isn't a retail job at Food Line or something like that. And I was wondering, is there any opportunities, or is there any projected growth for Betty's Ford that isn't sourced to that isn't stemming from gentrification or anything? for like kids who are of color?
Thank you for that question, Logan.
That's a
Thank you.
loaded one. Man, Logan, came with the heat on the last question.
I appreciate your question, Logan, and thank you for coming. And that's a hard question because job creation is oftentimes thought of for people with families and not thinking about young folks and how they could attain skills or be exposed to skills that might change like the direction of their life. My nephew's staying with me this summer and he had the hardest time finding a job. And when he did, he had to go to Target, right? And then he had to go to Target across town. So it's us trying to get him back and forth. And so I think along Baby's Board, as I mentioned, some of the investment in how we're trying to work to get small businesses, I think we also have to give young people an opportunity, partner with those businesses to give people an opportunity to work there. I do think that if we continue to be intentional about those businesses, you will see more opportunity. It's just gonna take a lot of time. And I think we stay on the course of trying to provide those programs, participate in this process, share your voice around job creation, because you hear about these big companies coming, but they're rarely talking about youth programs. And they're rarely talking about how do we provide some type of job training for folks when these big companies come. And so when you hear about it, participate in processes like these, we can start talking about it beyond just this room, but with people that can actually make it happen. But thank you for coming, and don't stop showing up. Sign up on our website, cltfuture.com, follow us on Instagram and CLT Planning, and share with 10, 15, 20 of your friends so they can show up too. So thank you.
That's right, that's what the cool young people are, huh? Instagram.
I had to, that's all we got. You can't do Twitter, nothing else.
Ms. Osborne, if you will, please give us some closing statements, then we will quickly go into announcements.
Thank you all for the opportunity to come and share where we are. What I do want to leave you with is that continue to show up and to ask the hard questions. I might not answer everything exactly like you want to hear, or maybe not completely, but I appreciate the question, and I will take what I hear and what the concerns that you have back to the city. And my department isn't the only department doing this work, it's the city as a unit. And we will do our best and continue to try to make sure that we are being clear about the 20 different plans that are happening that confuses folks. The 42 meetings, we're working with our consultant, Rhonda Caldwell, and we work with Winston already, but what can we do more beyond just the radio ads and the Google ads to get the word out and meeting people more where they are, and it does take money. So when council members are talking to you about what you need and what we put in the budget, you go to them and say, we need planning to get more money for community engagement so they can buy TV ads, because it's expensive. And so we do the best we can with the resources we have, and we'll continue to do that, but we need your voice in the room to help shape what we have and what we plan to do. Don't stop showing up. That's all I have to say about that. Please continue to show up and continue to ask the hard questions, because that's the only way change happens. So I thank you all again.
Round of applause for Alysia Osborne. Quickly, we have announcements from Jay Hill, Ms. Jackie Edwards Walton. Anyone else? Announcements? If you have one, send it to S. Johnston at TuesdayForumCharlotte.org. Go ahead, Jay.
Good morning, everybody. I'm excited because this Thursday we are having, I'm working with the Dewey Shop School of Cosmetology. We are having a LaSalle Street cleanup day. And so I've heard in this meeting many times the challenge of keeping Bates Ford and LaSalle Street clean. And so if you will please do me a favor and let me know before I leave if you'll come out and volunteer to help clean up. The time is 5:30 to 8:30. 2 hours of your time to work on our corridor. Thank you.
All right.
And it was on Instagram.
Ms. Jackie, and then quickly, Mr. Combs.
I I'd like to announce for Dr. Penn that on September the 14th, there will be a celebration putting out these 2 books. It's going to be at Arbor Glen, 1 p.m. She'd love for you to attend.
Thank you so much. Mr. Kuntz and Dr. Thomas.
Good, Mike.
Coming right to it.
I just want to say, first of all, that I hate cutting grass. I don't want to take responsibility for changing light bulbs and electricity. So I have been fortunate enough to have moved into a senior center, and it's affordable housing. It's called Central Square. It's right there by St. Paul Baptist Church. And I am so very, very happy. And whatever the zoning department may have done to make that happen, praise God and bless you, Cherry. That's my announcement.
My announcement is my sister is here. She's from California. Just thinking we got a new president on the way from California. And I'm so excited that my sister, my only sister, my baby sister, she's brilliant. I just wanted to announce that.
My name is Michelle Moore. I'm Thomas's younger sister. I'm glad to be here. You told me about the storm and I wanted to join in. But I did live here many, many years ago. I went to West Charlotte. So I'm really excited to hear about the growth and development. And I'm a project manager too, so I was like, let me go catch some of this. This is
Are you
awesome.
here to stay?
I'm here to stay. I bought a property in 4th Ward, and yeah, I'm here to help out with the family, and yeah.
Great.
Nice. Welcome to Charlotte. Hope to see you every Tuesday. Also, I would be remiss if I did not recognize our elected official. You have anything to say? Hey, man, I know you got something to say. You work with the government.
Well, I go down there. They rule the house. Yeah, I'm glad to be here. I've been a little hiatus. I haven't been. We're out of session now, and we have some upcoming sessions too. They're gonna try to override. They will override the governor's veto. As I say again, we do not have. They have a supermajority, and we got a super minority. And hopefully, with getting out, and you know, we had 11% decrease in turnout last election. That was critical because we lost Sheriff Beasley by 400 votes, and somewhere between that 0.5% could have done that. But this election in November is very important because we want to take back. We want to break that supermajority. Thank you.
Ms. Darnell.
I don't have an announcement. I used to come to the Tuesday morning breakfast forum when I worked at Park and Rec when they met over at McDonald's cafeteria. That was many years ago, probably before you were born, Winston. But Ms. Osborne, I just want to, I'm right here. I've worked with you from a long time ago, and I just want to commend you on the confidence in the way that you answered and conducted yourself in the meetings. I'm just amazed that you carry all that in your head. But it's always important that we give good to people and positive to people. So I want to just thank you that I'm here today. I don't come to the forum often, but I've come for the last couple of Tuesdays. But hats off to you. And I know people came at you with different perspectives, but continue to do what you're doing. And I really feel that you will be a spokesperson and make sure that all of what was shared will go back to the city and they will consider it. So thank you.
Thank you.
And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending Tuesday morning forum. Please come back next week where our guest is somebody incredible. Hope to see you. Come on back. Dr. Thomas, play us out.
Thank you.
That over.